The Gold Cup is scheduled to kick off on the 11th of July, and we are talking about the USMNT roster, what it could be, and what it should be. What up, guys? I'm Pete Douthit, here with 11 Yanks. Most of you know me already. If you're new to the channel, we discuss all things USMNT. Smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit like. Let's get into it. So before we get into putting this roster together, let's talk about what our two main objectives should be, in my opinion, for the Gold Cup. Number one, continue the winning momentum. Guys, we beat Mexico in the Nations League final. We won a trophy. People are starting to pay attention, both casual fans and maybe fans who were fans before but stopped paying attention after Cuba. You've started to build some momentum. You've started to build some interest and excitement in the program again, and it does seem to be trending in the right direction. Now, what you haven't done yet is convinced a ton of fans to hop on the bandwagon, especially the kinds of fans who maybe the last time they watched the US was at a World Cup, or maybe stopped watching the US after Cuba. This Nations League win piqued their interest and got them curious again. Hey, are we good again? What is this? And the Gold Cup is a chance to prove that to them. Because right now, they're paying attention, but they might not yet be completely sold on the program. So if they come and watch Gold Cup and it's a bust, you've lost all those fans again. It's really important now that you've piqued the interest of the fan base, especially the casual fans or the part-time fans or the people who aren't fully invested yet. Those are the people that you have to continue to win over with this Gold Cup. So you have to play well, you have to make it exciting, you have to win your big matchups, you have to at least make it to a final. Because a lot of people who aren't diehards, they don't understand that this is actually going to be a B roster and that there's nuance and maybe losing to a team is different because of the players we have and blah, blah, blah. They just see the USMNT lost to Canada. That's not a headline that you want out there. That's going to be damaging to the program. So yeah, all that to say, the number one objective should be to continue the winning momentum. Absolutely, we should try and go for the win, even with the B roster. Look, Mexico is going to bring a C roster, okay? A lot of their A team that played in the Nations League isn't going to be there. I would be very surprised if the likes of Chucky Lozano and Tecatito and Hector Herrera and Andres Guardado are going to suit up again for the Gold Cup. I think they're going to let them have the summer off. A lot of their young Mexican players who play in Liga MX are the ages of 20 to 24. Those guys are largely going to be at the Olympics, which means the team that Mexico brings to Gold Cup isn't going to be that strong. Now, of course, there are other threats. Canada, Qatar, and Jamaica, even Honduras are all teams that could really have a chance at winning this tournament, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to as well, especially considering the roster I'm going to suggest. So we have to make a deep run into this tournament. At least we need to try and make the final and maybe even win it. Number two, solidify depth and reinforce key positions. Now, the starting 11 mostly picks itself at this point. There are still question marks around goalkeeper and center forward, but outside the starting 11, there's still a lot of depth, and we do need to reinforce a lot of positions. Left back, center back, and central midfield are areas where we could definitely still use more depth. And Gold Cup really is our last chance to have a look at players and say, is this somebody who can contribute meaningfully in World Cup qualifying? Are they better than maybe some of the B options that we have on the first team roster? I want people challenging for spots. I want to see young players who haven't gotten opportunities yet given opportunities so that we have a very comprehensive 23 to 30 players come World Cup qualifying. This means I don't want to see guys who spent all of 2019 with the team and have already proven consistently that they are not good enough. I'm not talking about young players here. I'm talking about guys in their mid to late 20s who've played many times for the USMNT, who largely played there because there weren't many other options. They took advantage of the vacuum of the missing generation. Guys like Christian Roldan, for example, we don't need to see him on the national team. We've seen him enough. We know he's not good enough. We know he isn't particularly effective, even in CONCACAF. So what we need to do is look either at young guys who haven't had a cap yet and see if they can contribute, or guys who have had caps in the past but maybe didn't quite make the Nations League roster, or maybe had some rough performances in the past but are now playing at a good level and maybe deserve another look. Another thing I want to address is the idea that players who are transferring to a new club shouldn't be considered for this roster. Let's take Brian Reynolds, for example. Greg Berhalter said before the Nations League that it was important for Brian Reynolds to start preseason with a new coach well. And while I agree that that is generally a good idea, this is our last opportunity to see players before World Cup qualifying begins, having a good solid Gold Cup, meshing with the team, getting used to the system, getting used to playing in CONCACAF, for me is more important than having a quote good preseason with their clubs. That is somewhat important, yes, but in my mind, this takes precedence. Hey guys, there's a new fantasy app that will change the way you watch the Euros this summer. Go to the App Store and download Fan Clash. You pick 4 players from a game, you earn points live as the game happens. You get 4 power-ups and swaps, and top the global ranks to win real cash. I joined the Netherlands-Austria game, picked 4 players, and now I gotta think about how to use my power-ups and swaps. To play against me, click on search and look for 11 Yanks. There will be a live leaderboard on the app for my followers. Whoever tops the rank of my followers wins a free month-long premium subscription on FanClash, which doubles cash prize awards. FanClash is giving away $10,000 during the Euros by running cash prizes throughout the tournament's 44 matches. As the tournament progresses, the prize pool will increase. Okay, well, let's dive right in. And goalkeepers, Matt Turner, David Ochoa, and Sean Johnson. I don't really have a ton to say about this. These are the guys that I would bring, okay? I fully expect Matt Turner to be the number 1 for this tournament, and deservedly so. He's been very consistent for New England for the last 2 years. He's 26 years old. And guys, look, after Ethan Horvath and Zach Steffen, we still have an opportunity here to build more depth at the goalkeeper position. David Ochoa is somebody that I hope goes as well. I think he needs to spend as much time as possible with the squad. I think he can back up Matt Turner, maybe get 45 minutes or 1 game depending on how things are going. Some people are calling for David Ochoa to start. I don't think this kid is ready to start. Remember, he's 20 years old. That's still very young for a goalkeeper. He's only played about 7 professional games in his life, and I think is a guy that we want involved with our program because he's talented. But he still has things he needs to work on. His play with RSL and even his play with the under-23s demonstrated that. He needs to focus a lot more on concentrating on getting the basics right, because it's no good to make a spectacular one-handed save and then not be able to hold on to a ball that goes straight into your body. David Ochoa still has things to work on technically, but more important, mentally. He has to mature a little bit, and he has time to do that, and I think he will, but he's not ready to start for us in a tournament yet. Sean Johnson is the guy that would be the old head, a goalkeeper who's very experienced, probably doesn't really have a future with the USMNT at this point, but as a third goalkeeper who's experienced a lot, who has more than 10 years in the game, I think that Sean Johnson would be a good guide for some of the younger goalkeepers and that veteran head in the roster who isn't going to play, but is very much there for camaraderie and leadership. Okay, so into the fullbacks, and I've got George Bello and Jonathan Gomez as my left backs. Some people may notice the absence of Sam Vines. Guys, we saw Sam Vines several times with the national team, and we saw him with the under-23s back in March. For me, Sam Vines is not somebody that's USMNT quality, okay? He's had quite a few chances to prove that he is, and he's just not. He's going to be a good MLS player, but I don't think he's somebody that can contribute in World Cup qualifying, and we've seen that, so I don't really see the need to bring him in. Jonathan Gomez. Now, Jonathan Gomez is still very young. He just spent 3 weeks in the Mexico camp during the Nations League, a very high ceiling left back, plays for Louisville City. I absolutely want Jonathan Gomez on this roster as the backup left back. I think we need to get him into our program. We are very weak on high ceiling elite left backs, guys, and we cannot afford to lose this guy. In my opinion, he has a higher ceiling than both George Bello and Sam Vines. And while I don't necessarily think he's ready to start against CONCACAF opposition, I do think he should be a guy we have in the roster, maybe cap tie him, maybe get him feeling good about our program and showing him that we value him, because he was just with this full senior team with Mexico, and that is not a player we can afford to lose. Right backs. Julian Araujo also did not have a very good tournament down in Guadalajara, but Julian Araujo is 19 years old and he started the season with LA Galaxy pretty well, so I do think he deserves another look. Shaquell Moore has kind of been flying under people's radars recently. He is a right back who plays for Tenerife in the Spanish second division, played 40 games there this last season. Maybe not an elite right back, but very technical, and the ability to play in the Spanish second division makes him, for me, a better candidate on this roster ahead of a guy like Aaron Herrera. I think he's worth bringing in. having a look. He's been pushing himself in Europe and improving, and he's still just 24 years old. I absolutely think this is a guy that we should call up. I don't know if I expect Greg Berhalter to call him up. I have a feeling Berhalter is going to go the Aaron Herrera look, or maybe a guy like Kyle Duncan gets a look. I'm not sure. Personally, I think Shaquell Moore really does deserve a look, and I hope we see him. Center backs now. So Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and Chris Richards. Now, these are the center backs that I want to bring. Now, Chris Richards is a question mark because we don't know the extent of his injury. If he is no longer injured, I absolutely think we need to call him in. He only has 3 caps. He's probably slated to be John Brooks' partner when we get into World Cup qualifying, and I think we need to get him used to CONCACAF. I think he needs to come in and start regular games and prove what he can do so we know if he's ready to start alongside John Brooks. I think he is, personally. And some people might say, oh, Chris Richards needs to stay over at Bayern and get a good preseason with Julian Nagelsmann and prove himself, and normally I would agree. But guys, this is our last chance for guys to come in and prove themselves and get used to CONCACAF and get used to the players and the system before World Cup qualifying starts. Like I said before, this takes precedence from a USMNT perspective. Miles Robinson is a guy that has been quietly consistent for Atlanta for the last 2 years. Probably should have been in Guadalajara, but Carlos Bocanegra and Darren Eales do not like their young Americans playing for the US unless they absolutely have to. This is a FIFA tournament. They cannot hold the likes of George Bello or Miles Robinson back. Walker Zimmerman, I've said my piece about him before. I think that he is a guy who defends well in the air. He's strong, commanding, solid, not very good with his feet, and not very good defending in isolation. That being said, of the center backs available that weren't in Nations League, I think Walker Zimmerman deserves this look. He can also bring leadership and experience to this roster. Cameron Carter-Vickers, I've talked about before. I didn't think that Cameron Carter-Vickers is a guy who has a long-term USMNT future based on what I saw. For one thing, he's only 6 feet tall, so he's about Mark McKenzie's height. He didn't seem very good playing with his feet and didn't seem very mobile to me. Now, to be fair, that was over a year ago. I'll be honest, I didn't see a ton of him playing for Bournemouth, but from all accounts, he had a very good season. And considering that he's still just 23 years old, I do think it's worth bringing him in and having another look. If for some reason Chris Richards is still injured or they don't want to bring him in, then I would be fine with bringing in a guy like Eryk Palmer-Brown. But for now, these are the 4 center backs that I think we should bring. Midfielders was honestly the most difficult one for me because there are so many central midfielders that I think deserve a look. The number 1 priority for me should be finding a backup for Tyler Adams because Tyler Adams is our most important player and nobody in the Nations League proved that they can take his place effectively when he's not there. The second priority for me is having a look at creative, technical midfielders. For some reason, Greg Berhalter, like many American coaches before him, doesn't appear to enjoy playing creative, technical players in central midfield. And for me, if we're going to break down teams, we can't just have athletes. We can't just have box-to-box midfielders. We need creativity. The under-23 Olympic qualifying proved what happens when you get a bunch of box-to-box midfielders and you don't have any creativity or attacking mids in the team. So my 6 are Leon Flach, Luca de la Torre, Julian Green, Gianluca Busio, Caden Clark, and Eryk Williamson. Now, there are other guys who I think are very close here. Paxton Pomykal is a guy I wouldn't mind seeing. If Owen Odesawi is fit, I heard that he was injured toward the end of the season, so I don't know how fit he is. But if he's no longer injured, I would absolutely call him up, maybe ahead of a guy like Eryk Williamson. Leon Flach has been really good for Philadelphia. I've been watching him play. Not only is he very clean and technical on the ball, but he does have that instinct to protect the back line and has been showing that even in CONCACAF Champions League. SBI reported that Greg Berhalter was in touch with Jim Curtin and Leon Flach about representing the U.S. in the Gold Cup, so that's a good sign. Luca de la Torre is a guy who, in my opinion, could have helped us a lot in Nations League, but for some reason, he did not go. He had a very strong season with Heracles, and then 2 excellent performances for the U.S. back in the March friendlies, including getting an assist, coming on the last 30 minutes against Northern Ireland and setting up opportunities for Daryl Dike. I don't know that he can necessarily play the 6, at least on the defensive side of the game, but a technical, creative midfielder who can operate in tight spaces is absolutely crucial, and I think it will be a travesty of justice if he is not on this roster. Julian Green is a guy who has been knocking on the door, getting his team promoted, going to be playing in Bundesliga, had an excellent season, absolutely deserves, in my opinion, to be one of the dual eights in Gold Cup. Somebody we should bring back in and have a look at. He also has World Cup experience and some experience in CONCACAF. He's definitely a guy I think needs to be there. Gianluca Busio and Caden Clark are the two young pretenders from MLS who have 0 caps. Neither of them has been called up. Both of them would have been very, very valuable to have in our Olympic qualifying tournament, but Jason Kreis, for some reason, decided he didn't want them there. This is our last opportunity to have a look at both of these guys before World Cup qualifying starts. They've both had excellent starts to the season. Caden Clark especially has been just really good, both with his goal scoring and with his play on the ball. He's 18 years old. He's going to be going to Leipzig at the end of the year. This is a guy that I think can contribute a ton to our central midfield and does need to be brought in. Some people want Gianluca Busio to be played at the 6 where he's playing for Sporting KC. I'm not convinced that that's the best spot for him. I just think that while he's pretty good on the ball, defensively, I don't know if he has what it takes to play the 6 in CONCACAF. I would like to see a little more from him physically and his ability to read the game and snuff out danger before it approaches. But as a dual 8, I can definitely see him being involved, and his ability on free kicks as well is another reason why I think we call him up. These are the 6 guys that I would bring. As you guys can see, there's no Sebastian Lletget, Jackson Yueill, Kellen Acosta, Christian Roldan. The first 3 that I mentioned, those guys were in Nations League. We need to give them some time off. There's really no point in bringing them here. I also think that those are some of the guys that we need to be looking at alternatives for. I don't think that Yueill, Lletget, or Acosta offer enough to this national team. I've said this many times, when you compress time and space, all of those guys struggle, and I think we need to be looking at other, better, younger options with higher ceilings. And forwards, this was also pretty tough. Konrad de la Fuente, Daryl Dike, Matthew Hoppe, Paul Arriola, Chris Mueller, and Tyler Boyd. Now this was difficult because both Jordan Morris and Uli Yanez are injured, so we actually didn't have a ton of options apart from guys who obviously were at Nations League. I haven't brought anyone who was on the Nations League roster to this because Berhalter said there would be very little, if any, overlap, and I agree with him. I think a lot of those guys do need time off. Konrad de la Fuente is a depth piece at wing that I think we need to be looking more at. Matthew Hoppe is a guy that I think should come in and challenge for center forward. You know, neither Daryl Dike nor Jordan Siebatcheu nor Josh Sargent solidified their spot during Nations League. Now, to be fair, Daryl Dike didn't play in Nations League and had an okay game against Costa Rica, but you can't trust a friendly against a B team of an opponent that just suffered 2 losses and the coach was being fired and they really didn't want to be there. You need to see Daryl Dike against some real gritty, tough CONCACAF opposition. Paul Arriola will bring experience to this squad. I do think he's got a limited attacking repertoire, but he will work hard. He will bring leadership to this team and is certainly one of the 4 wide forwards that I would bring. Chris Mueller hasn't had the best start of the season in Orlando, but he is still somebody who played really well last year, who performed well in some friendlies that he's been called up for, and deserves this shot to prove what he can do. Tyler Boyd is looking for redemption. He was in the Gold Cup 2 years ago and has gradually dropped off. Like Paul Arriola, I don't think Tyler Boyd has a very high ceiling. I think he's very limited technically, but I think does enough to be on a B roster for the US. Maybe he uses this tournament as a springboard, as an opportunity to prove what he can do. That's what everybody here should honestly be doing, saying, I want to fight for a spot on that World Cup qualifying roster. I want to prove that I have what it takes to contribute and compete with players who are playing at the highest levels in Europe and say that I belong, that I deserve to be here. Now, this is a very good team, and I think this is a team that is absolutely capable of going to Gold Cup and challenging to at very least get to the final. And if it's a Mexico C team, absolutely beat them in the final. I think that should be the goal. I think if we're going to stamp our authority on CONCACAF, guys, we have to let people know that we are here, and 1 trophy is not enough. We got to do it again in Gold Cup. We got to say, yeah, that's right. Not only is our first team good, our B team is good too, and our B team can still be very effective in CONCACAF. Let's hope that we get the opportunity to do that Greg Berhalter selects a roster that is competitive and has the capacity to win. I have some concerns that Greg Berhalter might go with a combination of the Olympic qualifying roster and a lot of the guys that he really liked back in 2019. I hope not, because I don't think that roster stands much of a chance at the Gold Cup. I do think we need a lot of these talented young guys to be brought in. and not fall into the trap of going over the same old guys who've already proven that they cannot cut it for the USMNT. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. You guys have a great week, and I will see you on Sunday.